Welcome to Easy Elim Learning Simplified. My name is Ruth, and today we are going still to continue with electrochemistry. But today we are learning about dry cells and accumulators. So we've already discussed on electrochemical cell or a voltaic cell. So how can we be able to use the information we have learned to discover what happens in a dry cell or the acid accumulators? So voltaic cells are also called electrochemical cells. They are cells in which electrical energy is generated from chemical reactions. There are usually two types of electrochemical cells. We have the primary cells. These are the ones that are not rechargeable, and then we have the secondary cells which can be recharged. So when you look at the primary cells, dry cells usually are the primary cells. They're usually of various types, and one of the examples is Lanclachi dry cell. This is very common because it's commonly used to power small equipment like remotes, like small electrical devices like the phones as well. So this is very common. As you can see on the dry cell, the structure, it consists of a zinc can with a carbon rod at the center. You can see the zinc can. It's important for you to see each and every structure because you can be asked to explain, for example, where the anode and the cathode is. Just being able to see how it's structured will give a better view of that. So we have the zinc can and a carbon rod at the center. So the center, which has the carbon rod, also known as graphite rod, is surrounded by a mixture of magnesium oxide and carbon, as you can see. So this is the mixture, and in which are in turn surrounded by a paste of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. So you can see we have the ammoniac paste, which is a mixture of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. There is after the manganese and carbon paste. So you have the carbon rod, the manganese 4-oxide paste and carbon, and then we have the ammonia and zinc chloride paste. So the protruding portion of the carbon is covered with a brass cap and the zinc can covered with a sealing material. So when you look at now the terminals, the zinc can is a negative terminal. So this is a negative terminal, while the carbon rod is a positive terminal. So we have the positive terminal and the negative terminal. So at the negative terminal, you know that zinc is discharged. So zinc is discharged to give zinc ions, and 2 electrons are given off. These 2 electrons travel to the positive terminal, where the 2 electrons are gained by ammonia gas to produce ammonia and hydrogen gas. That is the amine, supposed to be the amine. So the ammonium ions gain those 2 electrons to form ammonia gas and hydrogen gas. And then the gases, that is ammonia and hydrogen, are usually not used immediately, but they are used to form more complex reactions. Ammonia gas forms a complex with the zinc chloride in the paste, and then the hydrogen is oxidized to water by the manganese 4-oxide. So you can see the function of the powdered mixture of manganese 4-oxide. That one helps to convert hydrogen gas into water, and then for the paste containing ammonium chloride and zinc chloride, so that ammonia that is formed reacts with zinc chloride to form a complex. So when you look at the various components in the dry cell, the brass cap, you remember the brass cap, which is covering the carbon rod at the center. It acts as a positive terminal where reduction occurs, and we said reduction is a gain of electrons. And then the zinc can is a negative terminal where oxidation occurs, basically loss of electrons. And then the carbon rod, which also serves as a positive electrode, since it's the one that is covered with a brass cap at the top, it acts as the connecting wire between the positive and the negative terminal through which the electrons flow from the zinc can to the brass cap. And then also we have manganese 4 oxide. We learned that the manganese 4 oxide is used to oxidize hydrogen gas, which is used to produce water. So this dry cell can produce approximately 1.5 volts of electricity, and the dry ammonium chloride usually never conducts current. That is the reason why a paste is used instead. Which is a conductor. So you can be asked why ammonium chloride, dry ammonium chloride, is not used in the cell. This is because if it is dry, then the ions are going to be in fixed position. But if it is a paste, it means the ions are able to move about. So they are going to conduct electricity. So these dry cells cannot provide a continuous supply of electricity. They cannot be recharged. That's why they are primary cells. So after some time, they are just thrown away because they can't be replaced. So we have the secondary cells, which are rechargeable. An example is the lead acid accumulator. This is used for mostly in cars, to power cars. So when you look at the structure of this lead acid accumulator, we have some positive plates, as you can see, the positive plates of lead filled with lead 4 oxide, while the negative plates consist of a similar lead grilled filled with spongy lead. So we have the negative one and we have the positive one. They're just different plates that has been filled with different things. So in the anode, which is a positive, is filled with lead oxide, and then cathode is filled with spongy lead. I know the positive negative sign might make it a bit different from what you have discussed, but when that happens is where they are attached into the battery, which you're going to discuss later on in electrolysis. So the anode is usually attached to the positive part of the battery and the cathode the negative part. Although anode is the negative electrodes because it has higher concentration of electrons, and cathode is a positive electrode because it has less concentration of electrons. So do not get confused why there is positive negative. It's just the attachment to the battery. And then the grease are immersed in sulfuric acid. So sulfuric acid is the one that is used as an electrolyte in this case. So when you look at the reaction, we are looking at the discharging. So everything starts from the loss of electron. So the lead dissolves, forming lead 2 ions, and then the lead 4 oxide reacts with the hydrogen ions in the sulfuric acid, also forming lead 2 ions. Then the lead 2 ions formed at both electrodes reacts with the sulfate ions to form lead 2 sulfate. So the insoluble lead sulfate usually adheres to the electrode. So if you were to look at the reaction occurring at the anode and the cathode, so at the anode, the lead oxide reacts with hydrogen ions to release electrons and sulfate ions, as you can see from the equation, to give lead sulfate and water. And then lead ions as well, also at the cathode, gain those 2 electrons to form. So the lead ions are lost to form lead ions and sulfate, the lead solid, and then the ions are regained at the cathode. They react with the lead oxide and hydrogen ions and sulfate ions to form lead sulfate and water. So you notice that the sulfate is the most common product that is formed, and we say that it adheres to the electrodes. So the lead sulfate should not be left for too long to accumulate on the electrode. That's the reason why it's also taken to the back to the for repairs. It's usually scraped off after some time. So during recharging, usually done by applying a suitable voltage to the terminals of the cell. The negative terminal, the lead ions accept electrons and they form lead solid. Remember, we started with lead oxide losing electrons to form lead ions, which reacts with sulfate ions to form lead sulfate. So we are going back. So the lead ions in the lead sulfate are discharged to form lead solid. So this is the opposite reaction, as you can see. So the lead sulfate reacts to form lead solid, which now is deposited, and then on the other electrode, you can see the lead sulfate plus water forms lead oxide plus hydrogen ions, and sulfate ions and 2 electrons are released. Basically, we are going back to the reactants we had initially. So this process restores the original reactants. And so we are left with this one question that will help us to conclude the session. Diagram below shows a cross-section of a dry cell. Study it and answer questions that follow. So we have the brass cap, we have the zinc can, the sealing material, we have the powdered manganese oxide, and we have the ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. So write an equation reaction in which electrons are produced. So we know that zinc solid dissociates to form zinc ions, plus 2 electrons are given off, and then that the ones that travel to the cathode. The zinc can is lined with ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. What would happen if the mixture was to become dry? So we said we need it to be, if it's dry, it means the ions will be immobile, or they won't move. So the reaction is not going to occur. So no electricity will be produced. So remember we said we need it to be molten. So that's why it is in paste form or aqueous form. So that we can allow the ions to flow through the solution. So that's it for the dry cell. The dry cell is a very common question. You can be asked the functions of different structures. Can be just write the equation that is happening at the anode and cathode. So make sure you're able to understand what we have just discussed. So see you in the next lesson.